I'm Elizabeth Chiseri-Strater, an Emeritus Professor of Writing and Rhetoric in the English Department and a teacher in Women and Gender Studies. I've taught at UNCG for 25 years. My specialty is in ethnography and literacy, or how to do fieldwork on communities that you are not familiar with. Students of mine have studied the Hmong community in Greensboro, the UNCG costume studio, a homeless shelter, and a basketball team, to understand how literacy works in these communities. So in addition to teaching rhetoric and writing, I am and was particularly interested in cultures and subcultures and how they operate. When I retired, I began my journey of learning about disciplines outside of my own. Since as a professor, you really teach what you know, and while sometimes you're surprised with something new, your work mainly is within your field of expertise. But now, as a retired professor, I could become a student once again. I hope that as you hear my story, you might be inspired to do something similar yourselves. My first stop on this experience was within my own department, which offers so many courses that I didn't have an opportunity to take because I was teaching. There are courses in poetry and creative nonfiction, and Southern literature, African American literature, and on and on and on. I started this experience with a course that my good friend and colleague, Dr. Nancy Myers, teaches, the history of the English language. Dr. Myers is a recent recipient of the College Teaching Excellence Award for senior faculty, and I knew her to be an outstanding teacher. What I learned in this course was about the geographical roots of our language, how it operates phonetically and linguistically. This was a graduate course and very challenging. Not only was the content challenging, but also the pedagogy. This was not a lecture course. I needed to do my homework so that I could participate and engage in the group work that I was assigned to. There was considerable reading in the course, and while it was fascinating, it needed to be done on time so that I could contribute to the class. I learned a great deal not only about the topic, but about the way Dr. Myers teaches, so that all of her students are engaged at all times. She really deserves her teaching award, and in fact, any faculty could learn something from observing teaching. My next course was with a professor that I knew well and had always wanted to learn from, Richard Gant. So I audited an undergraduate art history course with two friends who were interested in art history. In this course, we began in Northern Europe in the 1400s and worked our way up to Frank Lloyd Wright and then ended with Surrealism. Dr. Gant used slides for his lectures as well as an enormous art history book that my friends and I shared. Richard taught us how to look at art, not just its history. He discussed the mediums, the materials, the techniques of artists, and of course, he talked about the context of the art, its social, religious, political, and personal themes. His specialty was architecture, and he showed me how to look at buildings and churches with new appreciation. My friends and I were appalled at how many students slept through his lectures because we found Richard funny and smart. Unfortunately, he was stolen away by Greensboro College, a real loss to UNCG. My next venture was over to our beautiful music building, where I asked permission to sit in on a course in ethnomusicology from Gavin Douglas. This course looks at music as culture, and we would explore a wide range of music styles and instruments around the world. This was a lecture class entirely, and it was beautifully taught with clips of music, slides, and demonstrations. Sometimes Gavin would be on the floor playing an unusual instrument that we had never seen. This was also an amazing experience as a student because I had no background in music theory. I was glad that I didn't have to take the exams because I knew they would be hard. I made friends with students in the class who verified that the course was challenging for them as well, but also quite wonderful. And then came the pandemic and my venture into Emeritus Courses. These courses are on Zoom and offered by Emeritus faculty all over the country. The topics were amazingly varied, from the Silk Road of China to rock music. So for $90, you could take a course from any place as long as you had a computer. My choice was a course in criminal and social justice called Faceless No More. I knew that President Biden was interested in changing the criminal justice system, and I had often wondered how the richest country in the world had such an outmoded prison system which held more inmates than any other country. This was a lecture course with a series of outstanding activists in the field of prison reform. Our leader for the series was Mark Hall, who had recently completed a 10-year prison journey that put him into the world of criminal and social justice. At age 50, Hall found himself incarcerated for white-collar crimes, and after leaving prison, he became an activist for prison reform himself, working to help inmates with re-entry into life as they left prison. Here are some of the various facts that I learned in this 6-week course. Children as young as 14 can be incarcerated for life. There are currently 137 offenders on death row in North Carolina. 80% of all juvenile lifers are persons of color. All those given the death penalty are poor. Nationally, 1 in every 28 children has a parent in jail. Women who give birth in prison are allowed only 72 hours to be with their child before it is taken away from them and given to a caregiver. There are 2 million people incarcerated in the United States. The recidivism rate is 70%. Most victims of crimes do not want the criminal to be executed. Men on death row wear red jumpsuits to distinguish them from other inmates. One of our speakers was Tessie Castillo, who worked with the incarcerated on death row. She volunteered to teach a journaling class to prisoners, and she put together a collection of their writing called Crimson Letters, available through Black Rose Publications. In these essays, written by men on death row, you learn about the poverty, the brutal childhoods, and the despair of these men who live in the shadow of death. As a writing teacher myself, I was impressed with the clarity and the sensitivity of their essays and became an advocate for ending the death penalty. Tessie's book has been banned from North Carolina prisons. During this course, we were able to talk with one man on death row for 15 minutes, the amount of time you're allowed to talk. We could hear his voice, his concerns, and have him as he talked about his children and missing them. There were 6 other speakers who were intimately connected with advocacy for abolishing the death sentence and reform of the prison system. One of the speakers who moved me and educated me was Melissa Radcliffe, who is the director of Our Children's Place of Coastal Horizons, a center committed to the children of the incarcerated. I never thought much about the children who had parents in prison and how they must feel. Melissa emphasized that these parents should be thought of and talked about as parents, not inmates. She shared many stories about the joy that fathers and mothers and children had when they were able to see one another during visitation days. And of course, those have been eliminated due to COVID. This work that Melissa's organization does felt really critical to me, and again gave me a source for advocacy for justice within our prison systems. This is my journey so far, and I hope to take more Emeritus courses and in-person classes when the pandemic allows it. UNCG has such a range of interesting departments and courses in education, and business, the arts, and healthcare. I urge you to take advantage of what is available to you as an alumni of UNCG, and in particular, to look at the courses from the Emeritus program. I feel that the pandemic has made us all more thoughtful about what is important and what we are able to do about social justice and overall learning about others outside of our comfort zone.